tonight's meeting to order of the Norfolk School Committee for Tuesday, November 10th. It is exactly 7 o'clock. In accordance with the Governor's order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 20, relating to the 2020 coronavirus emergency outbreak, the 2020 November 10th, 7 p.m. Norfolk School Committee meeting held live at Norfolk Town Hall, Room 124, shall be physically closed to the public to avoid public congregation. Alternative public access to this meeting shall be done through NCTV. This application will allow users to view the live meeting. Questions and comments submitted prior to the meeting will be read by the chair during the open public comment. The meeting will be recorded for future rebroadcast by the Norfolk Community Television. School committee meeting documents may be found on the Norfolk Public Schools website at www.norfolk.k12.ma.us. Questions and comments can be submitted to schoolcommitteequestions@norfolk.k12.ma.us. Questions for the school committee must be submitted prior to 3 p.m. on the day of the meeting in order for them to be read at the meeting. And now, as we start out every meeting, we'll read the mission statement, which is: the Norfolk Public Schools offers a safe, joyful, and challenging learning environment that meets the needs of our diverse students. Through school, family, and community partnerships, we provide an education that inspires lifelong learners, cultivates caring and productive citizens of our ever-changing world. Roll call, please.
Sarah Ward.
Shannon Manessis.
Jennifer Wynn.
Medora Champagne.
Thomas Doyle. Okay. We do not have any public comment tonight. And we go to Exhibit 1. We do have one donation to vote on, which is the Gretchen S. Sullivan Memorial Fund in the amount of $500 for HOD, and I will maybe butcher this last name, but it is Michael and Elizabeth Massacy? Is that the pronunciation of it? I apologize if I get that wrong. But anyway, they have generously donated a amount of $500 for the Gretchen Sullivan Memorial Fund. So do we have a motion to accept that donation?
I move to accept the donation.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And thank you again, and I apologize if I did misstate your name, but we very much appreciate your very generous donation. All right, so moving into my section of tonight's events. Ingrid's contract is actually in the process of coming up, so we need to form a subcommittee to conduct those negotiations. We had previously, if memory serves me correct, talked about this in the spring. We were initially supposed to, I think, potentially have the conversation possibly in September, if I'm still remembering correctly. And then Medora probably doesn't recall this part at all, but she was voluntold for this and has nicely offered to do so again.
Can't wait. Let's do it.
So the subcommittee would consist of myself and Medora, and then the purpose of that would be to negotiate a new contract with Ingrid. So we just need a vote to accept us two being members of that subcommittee and then conduct the negotiations. And obviously at the end of it, we'd bring the contract for the full committee vote for approval. So we have a motion to allow us to be the subcommittee members.
I move to allow Thomas Doyle and Medora Champagne to be the subcommittee.
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on that? Okay, seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Second item we have is agreements with Homes Transportation, something we'll be signing tonight.
So I
Did you
can
start
give
saying?
the- Yeah, I
Yeah,
can
go
give the context for that. So we have a contract, it was a 3-year transportation contract with Home. As a result of the COVID changes to our transportation plans, we have worked with the other districts in the region to reduce the cost of the contract and negotiate new terms for this year only. As you know, the Department of Ed changed the school year from 180 days to 170, so that takes 10 days off of our transportation contract. We are not providing transportation currently on Wednesdays. We have agreed with other districts to pay just 80% of the cost for Wednesdays with the condition that they maintain their drivers and they don't furlough any employees. Because if they don't do that, there's a critical shortage of drivers and they would not be in a position to remobilize for us. Those are really the only two changes. They also added for us this year the midday kindergarten bus run, which we didn't have in our original contract to accommodate the hybrid learning. So with that addition of the kindergarten buses, the reduction of the 20% reduction for Wednesday's costs and the elimination of 10 days, the total cost of the contract is fairly budget neutral. So we need a motion to sign the amendment to the memo of agreement to the contract with Holmes.
I move that we sign the memorandum of agreement to the contract with WT Holmes Transportation Company, Inc. For busing.
A second?
Second.
Any further discussion, questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. And moving on, this following item we also need a vote on, which is the various PTO fundraisers for this year. So you'll see them listed out through June. So presumably all these will be able to take place. I assume that we think these will all be able to get in.
Yeah, they've modified them based on safety requirements for COVID. So you can see trivia is going to be a virtual trivia night. They have made changes for the photography that they usually do for students to be held in an outside location. PTO does a tremendous amount to support the schools, to bring in enrichment programming, to fund teacher grants. They've been great partners. So we appreciate the fundraising efforts that they undertake. There's a couple of fundraisers on this that they have already moved forward with in the transition to new PTO board, and because of the changes to our meeting format, they're bringing this to us for your consideration for the remainder of the year fundraisers at this time. I'm modeling one of the beautiful CDC masks that they did in their last fundraisers, thanks to the PTO.
That's what they asked you. It's a nice mask.
It is, and it says Norfolk, and
Yeah,
so
wow.
those are being distributed, so thanks to the PTO for that. We support all the fundraisers that are proposed for this current year.
Okay, so just to be clear, so this is, some of these have already taken place. We just want to get all of them, and so these are ones that have already taken place and the ones that are to be scheduled. So I don't know if there's just
Or
any question with this.
proposed. They're proposed.
Well,
I'm on PTO.
The
board,
only
so-
ones that have
Oh,
moved
okay.
forward would be this Spirit Wear Sale, their Friendship Directory, the PTO sponsorship, but the rest are pending fundraisers, pending your
Got it.
approval.
So we'll go with proposed. Anyway, so do we have a vote to accept the proposed fundraising initiatives as laid out?
I move to accept the PTO's fundraising initiatives.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So thank you to them for again doing that. Very appreciative. And then I think we move on to Ingrid's portion of the evening.
All right, great. So the first thing that we have for tonight, we have Dot Pearl here, who is our Regional Director of Wellness. I have presented to the committee in the past that we wrote a regional grant. It was about $350,000 that funded a Director of Wellness for Norfolk, KP, Rentham, and Plainville, as well as social worker positions and some professional development funding. So Dot is here today to provide you an update of what we have done with that grant. So Dot, come on up. And you have the copies of the slides in your packet, but she will share them from there.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Thanks for coming.
See everyone in person, sort of. You had a chance to take a look. Let's go back a second. As you see on the front of this, this is the whole school, whole community, whole child model. And so this position sort of takes a look at all those factors that play into that model. And so we're working our way through all of those and taking a look at all the districts across the region to see how we're doing in each of those areas to support health and learning. So just briefly, obviously, as Ingrid said, the collaboration of the four superintendents to improve student behavioral and mental health outcomes through the grant that was awarded in the spring of 2019 is really an exceptional collaboration between those superintendents to really help support the mental health and behavioral health needs of students. So I began last July 2019, and really took on just the goal of learning as much as I could about the districts and the towns, mapping things out in terms of where the districts are in terms of those efforts along with that model. and reaching out to town boards and services, local agencies and state agencies to talk about partnerships, to talk about ways that they could best support the students here. And really the overarching goal of all of that was really about how to improve student behavior and mental health outcomes, and to address related barriers to student success. The superintendents had sort of framed things for me that, it's been really difficult for students to access and families to access some of the resources and supports, because when the state looks at this area, they don't think that there's as much a need as there actually is when you do some digging about the needs of families and students. So the first, goal that I've sort of operated under is really to increase the access to Tier 3 supports through partnerships with outside agencies to provide school site-based counseling, and through partnership with referral agencies. So, when I first came on board, I really established relationships with outside providers in all of the towns in the region, people that were actually locally based, to learn a little bit about their agencies, what kinds of openings. Openings are rare many times, especially for children in this area. So they updated me on, what health insurances they were using, taking a look at what counseling, if a counselor referred someone to their agency, how long that wait list was going to look. So I'm trying to keep the counseling teams up to date on some of those resources as we move along. And then I began working on a school site-based counseling partnership with Arbor Counseling, and that's really for kids that are high risk that have access concerns. So as they move up the tiers of intervention, they may be referred to the adjustment counselors, the psychologists in the districts, and then they can't access services. Arbor is there so that if a family can't access the outside support, maybe it's transportation, maybe it's insurance, maybe they're on a wait list in 4 different agencies, Arbor can come into play. My hope this year is that will continue. We'll start to see more referrals to that program. They did start to work with a couple of families towards the end of the school year. A lot of the referrals from all 4 of the districts came in just before our closure, and the agency also closed and went to telehealth. So there was a little bit of transition time there, and they're starting to see clients both in their office and through telehealth. And as long as space is available in each of the schools, they could continue to make those referrals and have kids get that access. Some of my work is just collaboration with the family support specialist, the social worker also hired through that grant. And then I began sort of looking at, what referral services were out there to help support counselors in making those referrals. When counselors are spending a long time trying to make referrals to families, to counseling agencies, to check in with those families to see if anything took place. Many times families will say, forget it, then I'm not going to continue to be on wait lists. But while they're doing that, it's preventing them from doing other things to really give direct service to children in the schools. So we looked at the referral services to see if that could benefit the counselors in the schools. So into this year, continuing to work with those outside agencies, we revised over the summer. I met with the director at Arbor Partnerships around revising our referral process to help facilitate some movement there and better communication between the agency and the school districts. I'm in the process right now of finalizing a contract with Interface Referral Service, which is part of William James College. That will launch in January. The services most likely will not be available to families until the very beginning of February, but they do a lot of upfront work. So we would have sort of kickoff launches with counseling teams, anyone who wants to know what those services are about, a lot of PR and information. They start to vet out work with our counselors in our area, which I've already provided them with the list of people that I've already made contact with, and they'll build a database. Many communities in Massachusetts use interface referral, have good success. So when a family calls them, they actually connect them with an agency that has an opening that takes their insurance, and they just have to call and connect. Then they follow up with that family to make sure it was a good match and that things are going. Schools have had very good success, with interface referral, so we're hoping that's true here as well. And so one of the other pieces is really to work with the counseling teams and the schools around maybe some kind of data collection tool that we can really track risk and referral information for all the schools so that we can do ongoing needs assessment and identify other partnerships that could take place, for the schools. The second big area is really around increasing the availability and awareness of the families, as well as the appropriate staff, of local and state resources, supports, and programs. So I'll continue that outreach to those agencies. As part of that, Riverside Emergency Services which is the emergency service provider for our area, I found when I started meeting with the schools, there was some concerns about the level of service that Riverside would provide in a crisis situation or a risk assessment needed to be done. So they came out and met with all the mental health providers in the districts to sort of update on their services. And connecting with them this fall, they're really ramping up around helping schools and communities at the next level, really looking at wraparound and how do we help support if someone doesn't move to hospitalization or a higher level of need, how do they really help the school support that student? And it really, if we can increase that use, it impacts families that they don't have to drive to Norwood to their office and wait because all the crisis team is out in mobile crisis calls. They don't have to go to an emergency room and sit in a waiting room, an emergency room, waiting for a risk assessment by a professional. Curation of resources for parents and students during coronavirus, put together some supports that went out to the districts, as well as during all the incidences around George Floyd and the other race-related events. Resources for families to have conversations at home with their children or to access other resources that would be helpful to them. We did a summer resources update, which included access to different food sources, access if you lost your job, how do you help pay for your utilities, all of those kinds of services. And then this fall put together a family resource guide. I don't know if you want to just show that for briefly.
It's on our website. I think
Yeah.
most people
You guys have
probably
seen it all.
researching.
Sure. So we'll continue to update and change that, and based on changes in services as we move forward. A lot of the supports in there are things that are in place now during the pandemic. Part of increasing the awareness of families is really around parent wellness education. Last spring, those are the programs that we ran. The last two, we moved to a virtual presentation for the parents because of the closures. And both speakers in those situations really adapted their presentations to the situation of now parents having their kids at home and what that was going to look like. We did a partnership with Hockomock Y for summer meals program. After the school food services finished serving their remote meals at the end of the school year, Hockomock picked it up. We did it out of the KP high school bus loop, and families came and picked up meals, breakfast and lunch 3 times a week throughout the summer. And actually they extended it right until the 14th of September this year. Actually, I just connected and partnered with them again for KP when their food service people were out on quarantine to help provide foods during that time. One of my goals this year is really to develop a regional parent education committee that will plan a series of parent wellness events throughout the year. You'll see that for many towns are doing that now, some in conjunction with their other coalitions. But oftentimes, every school's parent groups, CPAC, all of those groups are working on all kinds of programming, overlapping dates, spending funds in duplicate. So hopefully that will be something that can help increase also the access to all the families in the district to learn about the information that they need to help support their students at home. Grants is something that will embed throughout the work that I'm doing, continuing to research the grants that might be available that would support the sustainability of any of the wellness initiatives that the districts have in place now and that we've continued to move on, and also really take a look at what the wellness focus is in the districts and how those grants might support those. The grants listed at the top are the grants that we received this year. The third one down, the DESE Supporting Students' Behavioral, Mental Health, and Wellness Grant, is the second year of the grant that the superintendents received last year. We didn't get as much money as they did the first time around, but still enough money to continue some of the things that we started. This position, the social workers, and some other things. Part of the interface services will come out of that for this school year as well.
I just want to jump in and say
Sure.
God is being very modest here. When he says these are grants we received, these are grants she researched, pursued, and acquired. So that's hundreds of thousands of dollars that have come in for mental health, parent programs, summer curriculum work that our staff did around RTI intervention. So she's worked really hard on this.
Thank you. It's
When did you, if you don't mind me interrupting, when did you start the grant request process, I don't know if that's the right terminology, but when, like, all this seems very timely given what we're going through now. You, like Nostradamus, like to realize that we needed this a year ago? I mean, how far back does this go where you initially put these requests in?
Yeah, so when I came on board in July, that was part of my summer work that first summer. It's really identifying grants and sort of mapping out, okay, when is there a grant application process that opens? And then really just watching.
July 19th.
Yes.
Okay.
And starting to watch, what's out there. And really, after doing an assessment of sort of the wellness and where we're at in all the districts, sort of identifying what are some areas that we really need to pay attention to, and also that the superintendents really provided me with that information from the beginning, and really talking about, mental health, wellness in general, behavioral health, all of those things that families needed some supports in, and the schools could increase programming in as well. So taking a look at, watching the DESE sites, watching SAMHSA, some of the U.S. Gov grant sites. The bottom three, from the DESE one down, those are all from the Department of Ed. The Systems for Student Success grant had a number of priorities, but they awarded them just about the week that everybody closed. So getting any work done in that time was really difficult because teachers were just trying to learn how to teach then at that point in a new way. So that's when we switched that to the summer and we had a good team from each district taking a course in MTSS, and the second continuation of that grant will enable not as many of the priorities to be attacked as we thought, but just it will enable some of the work to continue on the MTSS RTI process in each of the districts by their district team. The last two that are pending, the Safe and Supportive Schools grant, Plainville decided to move forward with one of their priorities on that, so I helped them complete that grant and then worked with Healthy KP for the CDC Drug-Free Communities grant. That was a grant that was due back in June. Originally March, they moved it to June with COVID, and they'll hear about that in December. It's a long wait period.
Yeah, it's delaying a lot of funds in grant decisions.
Yeah, and that.
That's a fairly substantial grant, too.
Yeah, it's about 500,000 over 5 years. Yeah, it's a big grant. And Healthy KP, that's one of they want to have some funds to be able to extend some prevention efforts. So I'll continue sort of searching. The grants are interesting. The DESE ones aren't too bad to apply to, but the federal ones, as some of you may know, are quite the challenge. When I first started meeting with all the districts, I heard all over in each district, that employees really needed support around their own wellness. And as we know, to be able to do a good job and deliver every day to students and be in front of students with the best energy, staff needs to be well. I heard a lot about stress as I talked with people throughout the districts. I did a survey to address their needs and interests and things that people were interested in. Here in Norfolk, I partnered with Roxanne Bordeaux and the Maya representative to look at what we could offer in in Norfolk. The other districts were a little bit different based on what their health insurance programs were, but Maya is great, has a ton of offerings, and she put together some things. We had a couple things that were supposed to kick off right around the closure. It's kind of discouraging that closure came when it did. And then we curated resources for employee wellness during COVID and provided that to staff. Because they were really struggling, I think, in terms of their own self-care and the stress levels and trying to manage. Just being able to find time to do those things is part of the struggle that I hear now from some of the staff to take care of themselves as well. And so this year, we did do an employee wellness guide that listed all of the resources for them, both around mental health as well as physical health, and also around topics that would help them improve their personal and professional strength around grief and loss, trauma, all of those pieces. COVID testing, Norfolk and KP reached out around doing COVID testing in September. Norfolk did it first because you had your staff back first. I think it went pretty well. I think we had about 95 people approximately tested in Norfolk.
Close to 100.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're testing again the Monday after Thanksgiving break in Norfolk and KP again. Through a clinic in both districts.
How long did the test results take to come back?
24 to 48 hours when we do the onset level testing, and we're intentionally doing it the Monday after Thanksgiving in case anybody has traveled. We want to expedite people's access to testing and results being returned. because of quarantine requirements and because of holiday gatherings.
No, I understand that.
And we have over 100 registered for the next
Yeah,
one,
it's
too. I think
moving
we're short of-
quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're coming for a chunk of time in the morning, and I think almost every appointment's taken at this point. And we'll expand that if we need to, and depending on the team that they send out to us.
Is the team from this is a private lab, right? Correct? Because
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
We were, who people we worked for,
It's Cataldo Ambulance Pro EMS, but they send their tests to the Broad Institute, which is affiliated with MIT and Harvard.
Right.
And
No,
they do
I
all
had
their
just
assessment.
read on the news that Westwood was having trouble getting from the state a mobile site. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. But we're private, so that's why we have it. Okay.
Yeah, so the state has recently implemented and is offering rapid mobile testing units, and that they will send out to schools that are struggling with high transmission or
Right.
an emergency situation. Those are harder. We have
Yeah,
scheduled this
yes.
to private, and we're using, we have used funding from the CARES grant through the county and through the schools to offset the cost of those COVID surveillance testing.
Got it. Thank you.
Would this also, are we looking to do this potentially after, whatever we're calling winter break now this time? Because you may have, again, that's a time of family gathering. I know some of it, they'd be out for a period of time, so that probably helps to some degree. Is that also like consideration, or?
We haven't scheduled any testing for January, but it's something that we will probably be considering as we return back. We sort of, we just booked the Thanksgiving one, and
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, we're kind of monitoring the situation at the state level too.
Yeah. They were so busy, Cataldo, they weren't sure they could accommodate us the day after Thanksgiving, but they had 2 districts who went into closure for the rest of the year, and they said, we can do you now. So we're like, great. And we also, in the employee wellness guide, I listed a lot of other COVID testing opportunities for people if they needed to test, in a time that we weren't doing the testing.
And we run programming too.
Oh,
So
yeah, I missed that.
through Maya, there's meditation early morning once a week and once in the evening. There are some virtual classes, health classes, yoga that is offered in the district. There's also, we heard feedback from teachers that they were looking for support groups, people they could talk to about supporting students in responding to trauma or returning to school. So there's a bunch of different support groups that have been coordinated with local providers, local counselors that are running them, that teachers have access to. So
Nice.
it's pretty robust, and
Yeah.
Todd did a great job on that.
The last 2 of those is both of those the yoga company and transitions counseling have been phenomenal at really wanting to give back and to be able to help the community. I know transition counseling keeps calling me saying, try to get more people to apply, register for the support group, because it's been really helpful. So
And they're doing that at no cost.
yes, yes, they've been really phenomenal. And these are just other areas. I didn't go into these too thoroughly, but these are other areas of focus during this year. I did convene a homework study committee based on sort of looking at the homework as relates to wellness and well-being and how we are. The team was great through all the districts, and then we closed around the time we talked about doing some focus groups with families around and teachers around those pieces. So, we need to determine, next steps on that. I think at the time it was, when I reached out to them, of course, everybody was doing homework, so.
But the end goal of that
Sure.
committee is to have recommendations and guidelines consistent across the elementary districts, and as we're seeking to take key around expectations for homework. So they did a lot of research on best practice and impact and effectiveness of homework, and they'll be coming up.
The MTSS we already spoke about the summer, and hopefully that will continue the implementation efforts. I'm looking at suicide prevention protocols with the districts, and we've added sort of to that sort of suicide prevention protocols and risk assessments when students are home and when they're on remote or when they're in, they're not in school that day and they rate themselves. So we're taking a look at that, making sure that we have all of those measures in place. And the districts are all doing something a little bit different with those, so we're trying to sort of meeting with them and pulling them together to see if we could sort of have a consistent piece. Social emotional learning is, a big interest of mine, and I think Norfolk has done great work around social emotional learning and putting the second step curriculum and all of those pieces, the work that the adjustment counselors are doing. Not every district is doing the same thing, so we're taking a look at, well, it's okay to not do the same thing, but what competencies are all kids getting, so that when they're coming from the 3 districts and moving into the middle school, they all have the common language and common competencies that at least have had some attention during their years. So I'm hoping to work a little bit more closely with the people that sort of move the social emotional learning in each district to see how we can pull all of those together. health and physical education. It was the last area I would say I'd hoped to do sort of, as part of the grant we had written in for extending sort of a review of that curriculum throughout. They will still try to work on some of that as well this year without that, the grant piece, to really get a sense of where we're teaching health, where we're not, and what kinds of continuum of health we can be working on each year. And really looking at, what programs are evidence-based and what that data looks like around the work that's being delivered there. Any questions?
Dot, I just want to say thank you for your hard work. I mean, this is. I work in a middle school, and so this is critical. I can't even tell you this year. My school psychologist and adjustment counselors, they are overwhelmed, and they said actually a lot of it this year is parents. So that to have the wraparound services for parents is critical. Because how. What it's like in a family. It gets past, it sets the tone in the house, and it just, so thank you. It's critical, and I hope, I can't remember how long this grant lasts or what the plan is. We better keep her around because we can't teach without, if someone's not mentally well.
It was a one-year grant, and we wrote a second year, or wrote an extension, so we have it through this year. Hopefully the state will continue to support that.
Okay.
This is a DESI grant, state funds.
It's extremely well
And we have
needed.
critical need in Norfolk for access to that kind of mental health counseling services and crisis services. We were really concerned for our community that doesn't have a hospital, and we're referring kids to Norwood Hospital. When families are in crisis, they go to Norwood Hospital and leave with a recommendation for city counseling. There is a 6 to 8 month wait list. So we really wanted, that was the focus that we had, to bring school-based counseling and make that available for families who needed it. Access and better leverage community partners to meet that need that would be priority for students in Norfolk Public Schools. So she's done a great job with that.
And I'm
It's made a huge difference.
assuming you send the list out to, how do the counselors access the list of outside therapists?
The outside therapist list, I give to them the whole list based
Okay.
on, the different areas, whether they're private, whether it's part of
Yeah.
a public agency.
Perfect.
Whether it's, they also have lists of like support groups for families, grandparents raising grandchildren, or support groups for LGBTQ youth, or all of those. I always recommend to them not to give sort of the counseling list of outside providers out to a family because it's just so overwhelming.
Yes.
And it's hard to navigate. But if they can look at it and say, okay, I know there's someone who sees children between this age group with these particular areas and this insurance, it helps them to cut through it.
Great.
But hopefully Interface will help replace some of that time that they spend sort of negotiating with families around where to go.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Dot?
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, the grant work is impressive.
Dogs everywhere.
That's stating how complicated some of these federal grants are.
I do a lot of federal grant work. I don't know how you did that many in a short amount of time, so thank you.
Some of them weren't too bad. I don't know if I can shut that off or not. Let's see.
We'll jump on to, again, for school committee policy. The school committee is responsible for funding all fundraising activities through the schools. So you approve the PTO fundraising. Additionally, each building does some fundraising activities over the course of the school year. They're fairly traditional. There's nothing in here that we haven't done for a number of years to really highlight all of the forms. Some of these are taken, obviously, given with COVID. So at Freeman, there's a lot of fundraising for sixth grade promotion activities. They've listed some of the things they've done in the past. They do a collection, season of giving for the Santa Foundation, usually in November to December. We do a fundraiser for Read Across America, that funds scholarships for KP students.
KP graduated seniors.
Okay. For KP graduated seniors. That's run by the NTA. Jump Roper Heart and Sonia are other fundraisers that we have done in the past. Oh, sorry. So not only do I have a mask, but I'm not near the microphone, sorry. And then HOD does a food drive for the food pantry, again, holiday sharing and caring. Read Across America, they do a rally against cancer on opening day at Fenway Park. Hopefully we will see that happen. They are establishing a memorial for Gretchen Sullivan to fundraise to contribute, again, to math or other kind of curriculum initiatives, and Jump Rope for Heart in May. They do have new members on the school council, and typically they do one unique fundraiser each year that aligns with their school goals. But they have new members, and they haven't identified that yet at this point. So we need a motion to approve the school-based fundraisers, unless anyone has further questions on that.
So do we have a motion to approve those fundraisers as described?
So moved?
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
I can't wait to conduct Jump Rope for Heart in my dining room. Amazing.
Yes, that will be an interesting
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Driveway would be good.
It'll be loud.
The next thing in your packet is just the quarterly report from BICO. Again, BICO is the collaborative that we belong to in Norfolk that provides programming for students with unique special educational needs. We are members of BICO, have been for, probably 15 years, for a long time. We have a new director, a new executive director that was hired to operate BICO this year, Jean Sullivan. She was a prior special education director in the Norton Public Schools and started on July 1. They have reopened for their students with COVID, obviously COVID modifications. They do have some students that are learning remotely. It's a small number that are fully remote for BICO. Most of the students in their programs are back to either full in-person or hybrid model. They started the year with 212 students, which is about typical. They budget for an average of 220, but they pick up referrals throughout the school year, so the budget is healthy. Implementing a new science curriculum for students in 9 to 12. And the executive director, as I said, just started in July and is in the process of doing an entry plan and evaluating the needs of the collaborative. I expect we'll have a report probably December or January on that. Okay. All right, the next thing I have for tonight that I want to highlight, a full report is in your packet, but as per our presentation over the summer when the committee approved the reopening plans, we said that after 6 to 8 weeks, we would send out a survey, gather feedback and information from our staff on how things were going, how students' learning was progressing, any needs or challenges that they saw, as well as from parents in the community to see what was working for families at home. So this is just a summary of the survey results. I'll just highlight a few things. We did ask about communication. Obviously, the district at this time has a lot of information we know we're sending home for parents, so we don't want to be flooding people, but there's a lot of information we have to communicate. So we asked for feedback on that. The vast majority of parents felt that the volume of communication from the superintendent's office and from the building principal's office was just right. Shocking to many of you, I'm sure. About 15% in both felt that it was too much, and a small percent felt too little. There were suggestions, and I am working on this, doing the best that we can to streamline communication, keep communication brief, and put links in for people who want more information, because it's a fine balance. Some people want to know all of it and know all the details, and other people just want to know the bullets. So we're modifying our platform a little bit to streamline that. We asked parents about how clear they were about the academic expectations for their child for this year. About 50% of parents felt that they really understood. Between agree and strongly agree, it's about 62%. We have about 21% of our parents that were neutral, and about 12% of our parents that were disagreed and felt that they weren't clear on the academic expectations. A lot of comments around that have to do, or where people said they were unclear. People are trying to process and understand better how the closure impacted this year's curriculum. How are we teaching skills that kids may have lost? So that's good information to us that we may have to communicate a little more clearly around that and provide some additional resources. We asked people about how they were doing with logging into the live SEL lessons. The vast majority of our parents found that they are usually able to log in without any difficulty. Again, in the narrative comments, some people reported that it's hard to help their younger students log in first thing in the morning. Sometimes people have some technical challenges with that, but most felt that kids really looked forward to connecting with their teachers and peers. We asked just to kind of gauge how people felt about the information they had about school-based protocols. Most people strongly felt that they had a clear understanding of the health and safety guidelines that we have in place. Still, the majority felt that they had a strong understanding of how the actions schools would take if there was a positive case. About 180 parents didn't feel that they really had clear understanding of that. So it is all published in our plan. I put it in last Wednesday's Words for Parents and a link to that. But I think as cases are increasing across the state, people are attending to that with a different level of focus than they did when we first presented the plan back in August.
And I feel like it's always changing, that what is considered close contact. I mean,
That's changed.
you know, so I don't
Yeah,
know.
the definition of close
confused,
contact
not a
was
teacher.
to be within 6 feet of an individual for 15 minutes or more, and now that's expanded to 15 minutes over a 24-hour period. So I'm sure that is probably contributing. The protocols for how we respond haven't changed. You know, if it's a school-based situation where a child becomes symptomatic, they would have to be isolated. We would have to do the contact tracing. So those protocols are all published online, but I may consider doing another town hall session for parents in December or early January as a question and answer if
I think
people have further.
people are more concerned about if there's a positive or more case in the school, like, do I find out? Not the name.
Yep, I'm going to
like,
speak to that
you know,
tonight. So that is something that people are wondering about, so I'll speak to that in a minute.
There's a point in here, and I know we're stopping you mid-presentation, I'm
Sorry.
sorry.
No,
but
that's
I'll
quite
forget.
all right.
Jen started it, but there's the thing on the bottom of this themes reported in comments for question 5, where it says, reported confusion about safety protocols and procedures, and then there's a couple examples. This top one, which is exact process that will be followed if a child is quarantined and awaiting results, I mean, my understanding is that child stays home.
They should be.
That's exactly right.
They stay home.
Yep. If a child is quarantined and awaiting results, they stay home.
Results.
Yep.
Just
But
so I'm
you know what, I
clear.
think that question was really more about what did they do for their learning while they're
Okay.
home.
Okay.
So, and we're working on some plans around that. But yes, they do stay home.
Okay.
Let's see, about 50% of parents indicated that they haven't really needed the support from the district website for looking for additional resources, but those that do, about 33% are using it to follow instructional videos and get support. We went to get feedback specific to each learning model, so we wanted to hear from parents of hybrid students and parents of remote students how things were going. The general themes, and I would have to say these really come across clearly in the student comments in the morning check-in when they're rating their day. Kids are thrilled to be back in school. I mean, we see so many, I'm so happy to be here, I'm excited about school, I'm excited to see my friends. 90% of our parents reported that kids are really enjoying the in-person learning, which is a tribute to the incredibly hard work that our teachers have done to make an unusual situation feel comfortable and normal for kids. The parents report that kids are able to complete their homework after in-person learning days. We are not giving a homework at all grade levels, but some students at the upper grades go home with an assignment after in-person learning. Kids are very successful with that. About 50% of parents indicated that it's 46%, indicated their kids are engaged during remote learning days. 27% were neutral, and about 26% were disagreed with that. That's definitely a theme that we've heard, is that it's harder for kids during the days that they are fully remote to stay on task and get assignments completed. But again, most parents feel that there's a good balance between paper and pencil assignments versus computer assignments. 55% strongly support that. About 30% are neutral. Only a small number were concerned about that. Again, the themes that came through in the narrative were that parents definitely reported they thought children learned best on remote days when they had paper and pencils assignments to supplement any videos or online instruction they're working. And they really responded well to the pre-recorded lessons that teachers have been providing. At Age Olive Day, we broke it up because we were wondering if the comments would really be different by building an age level. They're really not. There's really significant overlap. Again, kids are very happy about attending school, seeing their friends. Learning packets on the remote days are well balanced. Teachers are very supportive, answer questions that families have, provide accommodations and enrichment during learning days. There's great lines of communication. Very impressed with the teacher-recorded videos. Some parents reported they liked the opportunity for individualized attention that the small hybrid cohorts provide. We have 8 or 9 kids in some classes. Parents report they liked engaging with specialists during long live lessons, and they preferred that now that we are all using Google Classroom, found that easier to navigate. Let's see. Again, significant overlap with what we heard from Freeman Kennedy parents. Although at the upper grades, parents reported it was hard reminding kids to log into live specials. Managing that special schedule can be challenging. Let's see. Again, the themes are fairly over. You can read through them. As far as remote learning, and that was about 10.5% of the overall respondents, we had about 60% of parents respond. So we had 593 responses out of about 1,000 students. So that was a good return rate. 10% of those were remote learning only. We have 107 students that are enrolled in remote. Very positive comments again about the remote platform. The kids are, 75% said their kids are really engaged during remote learning days, that the workload is manageable, again, that they're satisfied with the balance of paper and pencil versus computer assignments. 66% felt that their child still feels like a member of the school community even when they're learning remotely. That was positive. 20% were neutral on that. And 87% reported that they were getting sufficient support for technology, and that's devices and tech help to support the remote learning. Again, a lot of positive feedback on the paper pencil assignments students are using to reinforce learning. Let's see. Comments on the remote model. Parents love the live lessons. Even the younger parents are saying that as kids get further into the year, they're increasing their independence with assignments and logging in. They really report that they were happy that the curriculum aligned and that kids in the remote were on pace and studying the same content that students that were engaged in hybrid learning. Again, some challenges were keeping track of the specialist schedule, which has been pretty much universal. Parents are struggling with.
It's not just me.
It's not just you.
It was very cryptic. It was really, you had to dissect it a bit.
Yeah, we're going to be looking at that, and I'll talk about sort of how we're responding. But that is a theme that's come across. Again, loving the live lessons, that kids are learning how to independently manage the technology. The challenges of the remote learning are not surprising. We're hearing parents are worried about social opportunities for students that are not, because many of our kids are also not engaging in sports or anything else right now for various family reasons. So that was a concern. And the amount of support sometimes younger kids need for logging in and accessing instruction when parents are balancing other work demands. So I don't think there was anything that was really surprising in the survey. We have heard some informal feedback. We will be taking a look at these results, working with the Teachers Association, looking at staff survey results, and making some recommendations for adjustments to our model. And I'm going to speak to that in just a minute. But before we get there, are there any questions about the survey results? Oh, I would say we left an open comment section at the end of the survey. Many parents shared more narrative comments. It was very helpful. Of all of the comments, again, we had 593 parents respond. Only about 10% of those respondents commented on an interest in returning to full live in-person learning. So it was about 50 comments on that.
Will this be published on the district website? I apologize if you said that and I missed it.
Yeah, it's already, if people look under the school committee packet, but yes, we want to share it out with our staff first and have a chance to talk with teachers about and get their insight into, if that's comments are consistent with what they're hearing and what they're seeing in the classroom. And after that, once we've shared it with teachers, we will make it available.
You mentioned you had a 60% response rate, and I know we had done other surveys prior to school beginning.
Yeah.
That percentage was 80-something previously?
When we were first doing some surveys in the spring about remote learning and hybrid learning, we had a very high response rate. It was probably 890 parents. I think people were really anxious at that time about what school was going to look like, how long we were going to be closed, so we had a very high engagement rate. So this is slightly lower than that.
What'd you say the percentage was?
It was about, we had about 850 respondents at that time, so it'd be about 85% because we have about 1,000 students. So it was higher than this.
I guess my question is, that's a pretty significant sample that's missing. So I don't know if I don't know what you can do with it because it's not there, but that is something like, why weren't people able to answer? Or
You're
why
using the
didn't-
same
Thomas,
delivery
I
method,
didn't
right?
respond. I didn't.
I mean, it's
Shame on
going
you.
out
I
to the
think-
same.
Yeah, I mean, this
Universe,
is
right?
higher than most surveys. When we send out curriculum surveys and other surveys, we get about 33%
Yeah.
on a
Well,
good
I
day.
guess what I'm getting to is if there's I know the percentage was pretty high in the beginning as far as not too much email or too much. Did
yeah.
that in it itself, the silence, indicate I'm getting too much stuff, I just simply didn't get to this? Like, we'll call this person Jen Wynn, was unable to answer.
The anonymous Jen Wynn.
How long did parents have to respond once they got the link?
We put it out, it was about over a week, and we did send reminders.
Listen, I mean, I'm the first delinquent to raise my hand and say that I forgot about school tape. Like, I mean, it's
Yeah.
just, I don't read
I
half the
didn't
stuff that
forget.
comes in,
I'm
but
just
I
in a
say,
different
no.
mindset
No,
than
but I know, but
everybody. It is
you
what
had
it
enough,
is.
And a
there
lot
was
of-
enough time. There was
You know,
a
sometimes
sufficient
when parents
turnaround
are
time
comfortable
to
with
provide a
something, they don't
response.
always respond. We usually hear from people that have concerns, and so we did send reminders, and it was out for a week, so.
I guess I just caution one way or the other, not to, like, even good, bad, indifferent.
Yep.
That's still a significant sample
Yep.
size that's missing, and that's maybe concerning, maybe not. I don't know, because we're just left to draw our own conclusions as to why. And
That's-
it could be, hey, I just couldn't get to it, I have stuff going on, that's perfectly valid. Everybody's got stuff
Yep.
going on, so that's fine. But I'm just saying,
It isn't what we saw in the spring, where we were having,
Do you know who-
80%. What I would say with this survey is the 60% is a good statistically
well,
valid
it's a
survey.
huge sample, I'm not disputing that.
And the positive thing with this is that the distribution of parents across the age, there was a good representation of every
Which is
grade level.
good.
It's almost equally divided in terms of response rate. So we do have representation and good feedback from all grade levels.
And Medora and I were definitely publicizing back in the spring, like, fill it out. So I mean, we were telling people, fill it out.
Listen, you asked me what happened last week, I'm with you.
I think conditions were
So
different
Thomas,
too
we'll
last year
make
when
sure we
we
get
sent
on
it
that,
out.
okay?
That sounds like the right thing to do.
Remind
so,
people.
yeah.
And I guess
Complete it.
my other question would be, I guess other districts have done similar things to this. Where do these numbers stand in respect to those other districts? Are we,
It's hard to compare because other districts have done surveys, and we aligned a lot of our questions to other districts, but they all have different models. And so the feedback they're getting, like we have
And they have
Franklin
people
Public
in high
Schools,
school.
they've delayed, they're
Yeah.
not reopened yet.
well,
So
I didn't know if there was you could look at the other districts the same as us.
similar to Rentham, and our models are similar to most elementary districts in this region.
Okay.
But the survey results, you know, they vary by district. I don't think Rentham's done a recent one. I'd have to check.
They did do one.
Did they do, Rentham did, not KP, Rentham?
Rentham, yep.
Okay, so I'd have to check. I'm not sure how this aligns.
No, I'd be curious, because, I mean, the numbers look very good overall. I mean, is that the same everyone else is getting? Is everybody doing better? Is everybody doing, just be
Yeah.
nice to see how these stack up as comparison to everyone else.
Yep, I could gather some comparison data. I would say I do join a monthly regional call with 20 area superintendents that are all in this area, and I would say that what they're reporting in terms of feedback is similar. That kids are really happy to be back in school, that parents and families are struggling a little bit with remote learning, and districts are looking for different ways to support those remote learners. So I think those themes are probably consistent among most districts, but I haven't compared the general results, so I could
curious.
gather some comparison data. Okay,
Thank you.
sure. All right.
If I could, from a communication standpoint, not a survey, I'm not asking
Yeah.
for another survey, but I know, and it just popped into my head because I got an email about it, I know report cards are going to come out and conferences are going to happen.
Yep.
And it's going to be different this year, and the
Yep.
whole model of school has been different this year.
Yep.
And, I'm sort of waking up every morning, and at least with my older child, taking it on faith that things that are happening,
Yeah.
they're supposed to be happening, are happening, and all this good stuff, and it seems to be going that way. Is there some way to communicate to parents kind of if expectations are different, like just what that process is going to be like?
Yep.
If you've been through it before, how is it going to be
Yes.
different? Are we using the same measuring metrics for
Yes.
kids that we've used in the past, just so you
Yep.
can sort of
It's a great question, and you always ask me right as we're preparing communication to go out. So tomorrow, when you get the Wednesday's words, we are using the same report card instruments, and there's information in the parent letter going out tomorrow about the timeline for when students will be bringing hard copies home of their report cards. We also will not be, because we rolled out special subject instruction later, so art, music, and wellness. We didn't start immediately at the beginning of the year, and then we started with asynchronous lessons. So we will not be evaluating student performance in those subjects on the first term marking report card. But we are also going to send out a letter with parents with the report card that explains the marking system and any changes for this current year.
And it's still we do the numbers, right? The 1, 2.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. I know there's a name for it. Standard space, something like
Yep.
that. Okay,
standard
got it.
space.
Okay, I remembered.
Okay.
That's from last year. I'm good.
So I just wanted to share some comments based on the survey. We have spent some time as our administrative team looking at the results. There are some things that we are working on in response to, as an immediate response, and some things that we had underway that will address some of the concerns that parents shared. As I mentioned to the committee, I believe at our last meeting, we have advertised and we're in the process of trying to hire a remote learning teacher that would exclusively be available to provide support and instruction to students in the hybrid model on their remote learning days. So as you know, hiring, there's a shortage of teachers right now. There's a shortage of subs. We've been really aggressively recruiting for that. We hope to have that position filled soon. And that would be able to, that teacher would be able to provide some teaching, reteaching, assistance, office hour kind of support to students on their remote learning days. The other thing that we are looking at right now is increasing the number of students that we're bringing in for more in-person learning, and that's for students with significant sorts of needs. So our English language learners that are non-English speakers, we have our level 1 students in for full in-person learning now. We have students that are just about between a level 1 and level 2. We're considering expanding in-person learning for that population of students. We are also looking at bringing back for more in-person learning an additional tier of students that are receiving substantial special education services. And the special education director has been working with staff at looking at criteria for that, who would be eligible for additional in-person learning. It's based on the volume of services students receive, as well as data on how they're responding to remote learning right now, and whether they're making progress towards their IEP goals. We sent out a survey, I believe it went out today, to parents whose students might be eligible for increased in-person learning time to see if they are interested in that. And we expect to transition more students back probably the week after Thanksgiving for that. Other things that we're doing, we will be working with the Norfolk Teachers Association to take a look at how we might be able to provide some more live instruction on remote learning days. Our teachers up at the upper levels have been interested in trying to pilot some live mini lessons. We are not considering live streaming. And I just want to define how that's different than live instruction. So some districts are doing live streaming. Live streaming just means there's a camera in the classroom that is broadcasting what's happening. So the teacher is teaching the students in front of them and people are watching instruction from the outside. That's live streaming. And the research is really clear that live streaming does not lead to positive learning outcomes, especially for younger students, because it leads to passive learning. They're not engaged in the dialogue. That is not something that we are considering. But we are looking at increasing live instruction. Live instruction would be a mini lesson, a short lesson where the teacher is providing direct instruction through the virtual platform to students in person and at home. Our upper grade teachers are interested in looking at that. We are going to be looking at, what subjects that might make sense for, how that would be structured. We do know that our older students are more successful in a full class live lesson than our younger students are. So what that might look like would look very different across the grade spans. We're not really sure how effective that would be with our younger students, so we're looking at different possibilities. We are also continuing to actively monitor the research and the COVID case counts, both locally and at the state level. We are talking about what would need to be in place in order for the district to consider a full return to in-person learning. I know that people are probably aware that the governor made an announcement on Friday last week, and the announcement was really saying that districts that are able to meet the safety standards and health guidelines should consider bringing students back for more in-person learning or a full return. Unfortunately, in Norfolk, that it isn't possible for us to do that and meet the safety guidelines. There's a couple of things that I want to point out for that. First of all, sorry, it's this mask on and talking for so long. There's a couple of different things. One is the amount of social distancing we provide. So as I presented back in August, the CDC, World Health Organization, Harvard Public School of Health, the Arabola Project, Ariadne Labs, all are committed to 6 feet of social distancing being critical in preventing the spread or transmission of the disease, even when people are wearing masks. The Department of Education gave districts some leeway and said you could go anywhere from 3 to 6 feet. However, they said they strongly encourage districts to strive for 6 feet, and they require 6 feet of distancing for mask breaks, snack, and lunch. So when we looked at that originally, we can't fit students in the class with 6 feet of distancing. Even if we went with the lower standard and looked at 3 to 4 feet in the classroom, we cannot accommodate all those students for lunch and snack breaks. The Freeman Kennedy cafeteria, if you implement the required guidelines, 6 feet of distancing, all students at a table facing the same direction, we can fit 38 students in the cafeteria. That's using the full space, which would mean for a single lunch, we would have to have half the kids in the classroom, 38 kids in the cafeteria, and use the gym just for one lunch. After that, we would have to sanitize and clean all of those spaces, which takes 20 to 30 minutes for them to be cleaned and dried, and then start a second lunch, which means that every available space in the building would be being used all day to serve the lunch. We have grade levels with 150
Would you
kids in them.
even have the staff to monitor
No, we would have to
that?
hire
You'd
staff to
start
monitor those
lunch
multiple
at,
settings.
I don't know, 9:15, you'd be starting lunch to...
Asking, I mean, you're getting mask overdue with the whole program doing this.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure because I think the community
it's
was...
simple. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I don't think anyone's even remotely, I haven't heard anyone even
I've
suggesting it's a
heard
possibility,
rumblings
right?
that
Yeah.
people would like to hear this discussed and explain
Really?
why it's not
Okay.
possible.
Yes.
I would like to, as a footnote, and to all of our adoring fans on YouTube, we will put a pin in this and talk about it when we're not in the middle of a public health crisis. We were going to have a challenge fitting the students in normally
best case
at the
scenario.
H.
Yeah,
Olive
right.
Day School without
Right,
a public health crisis going on. There was already a space shortage.
right.
And there will be one at Freeman.
There will
Yes.
still be one when we come back from this. It's
Yeah.
still happening, but there's no, you can't,
Oh, so it's a physical
even at 3
impossibility.
feet, like, even at 3 feet, there's not a bunch of unused space, like 6 feet, there's not a bunch of unused space in this, like,
That's right.
there's not enough room, and you
And
can't
for us,
bust
for
them.
mass breaks with the younger kids, we actually they have to be supervised. You have to take your whole class. Like at the high school, kids can go out by themselves and take a mass break, go to the bathroom. With us, we have to do that as a class, so we don't have space for that. And the other issue, because I do think there's increasing interest in this after the governor's statement, based on emails I've received, and I think you'll hear, the other big block for us is transportation. So we would have to double our buses. Our buses are at capacity, and that's 14 buses, so you'd have to double the runs, which is about $300,000 for the remaining balance of the year. But it would also mean 2 start times, 2 dismissal times. It's taking about 20 minutes now for half the parents to get through the drop-off and dismissal line, so increasing parent traffic is not a great option.
Well, and I think if someone does have concerns about this, I know it was discussed back in August, and, you know, I personally benefit from having been on the reopening committee, so I know this was discussed a lot in those meetings too, but, you know, it's just not a, you would spend the entirety of the day, every adult in the building would be moving children, shuttling children, and cleaning surfaces. There would be no education going on, which I think was there would be nobody would be being taught anything, because you would be washing your hands, being taken to or from a car, and, you know, having, you know, kind of playing outside, I guess, while every surface in the building was wiped down between, you know, so many children coming in and coming out. Like, there was going to be no time for education. It would defeat the purpose of a full
right.
return.
And I think the concerns we would have with this, again, in response to the governor's statement, is we're also heading into a spike. we're seeing an increase. And just so the community is not overly concerned, Norfolk was in the red right now with 84 new cases in the last 14 days. The majority of those are at the Norfolk prison. There is an increase in community transmission. We're aware of cases in the community, but the majority of those new cases are located and isolated at the Norfolk prison. But given that we're heading into times that public health officials in Massachusetts are concerned we'll see a significant spike after the holidays, all of those are things that would make it really difficult for us to even consider implementing something like that at this point.
Ingrid, I can just only speak from my own experience in my own school. I'm concerned about having enough staff if a few people had to be out for an extended period of time due to COVID. At least I know at our last meeting we talked about, and I know I've received emails as a parent, the desperate need for subs.
Yep.
Desperate. And I'm very concerned that if we did push everybody together and there was a spike and you had 2 or 3 teachers that had to be out for,
14
God
days.
forbid, or even on the best case, nothing really happened to them with COVID, they just had to be out. Would there be enough staff? That is my fear. And then nobody goes back
Yep.
for an extended period of time. We're all remote if there's not enough staff to open schools.
Right.
So there's a whole house of cards here that I just hope the public, I understand I get it as a parent, but as a teacher too, and as an administrator, I guess here somewhat, we have to really look as, we are together. It's not an I, it's not a me, it's not a you, it's a we, and we have to work together and realize that there are a lot of moving parts here. And I just want to be very careful moving into some potential pitfalls, because I know how much the kids enjoy being in school, and I'd like to see it continue with a gradual increase as data comes in.
Yeah.
We haven't formally announced.
Some research that's out there that parents are citing about that schools are not super spreader organizations, and that's true, and we're following that science. Many schools across the Commonwealth have opened. We haven't seen a dramatic spike, but that does not mean that there is no such thing as school-based transmission. And we do know that that's happened, and there's schools across Massachusetts that, as you have said, are now in remote because of cases. And so not being a super spreader doesn't mean that it's risk-free. So I just want to clarify that.
We haven't formally announced, I know KP just did, where they've said they're going to be hybrid for the remainder of the year. Sorry if I'm stealing something out there, sorry. But we haven't actually said that. I mean, I
No,
think we all can figure
we're
that is
watching
going to be the
everything.
case. I can't imagine a circumstance where that's not the case.
Right. What I've said to the public is unless there's a dramatic change in the research, in the availability of a vaccine or a treatment, our physical conditions don't change.
Yeah.
We can't make the buildings bigger. We can't, unless the guidelines change, we can't get more kids on a bus. We worked really collaboratively all summer with our teachers. They've been fabulous about putting safety things in place, coming back. The sub issue is an issue. We've been recruiting aggressively. We had an
I
open
know.
house the other day for new subs. But we also have to make sure that the conditions are comfortable and safe for everybody that's
Right.
working in the schools as well.
These are the people who are with our children, the staff that are with our children 6 to 7 hours a day.
Yep.
They have a huge influence. I personally would rather have my child be with someone who is comfortable and has a smile on their face as best as they can than a downtrodden,
Yeah.
even if we may feel it on the inside, I get it.
Yeah.
We need
all
everybody
want
to
our
feel.
kids back.
We all do.
Nobody's-
And I
We
think
all
that,
want to
you know,
open the doors and let everybody in.
Yeah.
It would make our jobs 1,000 times easier.
The teachers want all the kids back. We all want to send our kids back. I mean, there's
Yeah.
there's no one here who's like, oh, this is awesome.
Nobody's
loving
like,
this new life. Ever.
Nobody.
Like, this is gonna be awesome.
2020 is the
But
best year ever.
It's what the circumstances require, and it's
Yeah.
the best choice for all of the
For everybody to feel
interlocking
safe
groups of
and
people.
Yeah.
good about your job and excited, but.
And I think that
so.
the Massachusetts Superintendents Association put out a public response today to the governor's statement on, and really, I think we're all in the same boat. I know all the superintendents in the region that I was on the call with. Until there's medical consensus around the safe social distancing, we have to go with the conservative safe standard. It's what we've all negotiated in good faith, and it's hard to say, all right, let's go down to 3 feet when we don't have clear consensus that that's a safe distance. I know that,
Or
Tom,
even, or
did you
a
wanna
workable distance.
add anything? I know that teachers have heard all the conversation at the state level, or have we covered it, or?
I just want to say that the Norfolk Teachers Association completely agrees with everything that Dr. Alardi said here today, and that we are not in favor of a full return at this time.
Yeah. But we are watching it, and things are changing, and, you know, like I think you said, we all have the same goal. We'd all love, our teachers are working so hard to plan for 2 cohorts. I was walking around the other day, and I have more people saying, I feel like I'm a first-year teacher after 20 years of teaching, because everything's new, and they're planning really for 2 groups. They're planning for the cohort that's at home. They're really putting time into that. So in terms of ease, it would be much easier to bring everybody back. We just don't feel it's safe, and we don't feel that it would be an appropriate choice, especially when the state is seeing such a spike. So that's where we are with that. I'm happy to answer any questions people might have on that.
I have one question, going back to, I've received a number of questions about, and I know you've said the research is there, the live streaming.
Yes.
Is there anything that we can point people to that shows the research? Because a number of people have asked, why aren't we doing that? Other districts are doing it.
Yeah, you know what I think it is, and we'll put something together. I did share out the research. It's in our reopening report, the link to the research on live streaming. What I think people are confused about is what they're really asking for. So that's why I was trying to clarify the definition between live streaming and live instruction. The only districts I'm aware that are doing live streaming is more at the high school and middle school level, where kids could watch a lesson and not and be able to process more of what's happening and going on without that level of engagement. Districts that are doing live instruction, that's very different because it's designed to be delivered in that platform. So just like a Google Meet, you can see your students, they can submit questions, they can interact in a different way. We are in support of that, and that's what we're looking at for some of those remote days. We are not looking at just broadcasting.
No,
what's
and I
happening.
agree. I don't think that's
think that's
appropriate.
So I
a lot
think
of
when
people
parents are asking, what a lot of other districts are doing is that live instruction. So
And
I
not
think
the
they're
live
just
streaming.
mixing up terms. But their research is in the reopening
Okay,
report.
great. I'm going to look for that just because a few people have asked, so I'm like, all
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
I've gotten that same question, and I think you're right. I'm glad you made the point. I think they sort of know what they want without actually knowing the actual wording for it, and that's what they want. So I think what you're describing would, if that could come to fruition,
Yeah,
I
and
think would be
we are
ideal.
working, like I said, at the upper grades, teachers are interested in doing that. We know it's more successful, and then we're looking at what would that look like and what would be meaningful for the kids at the young.
And maybe the teachers would be interested in speaking with other teachers in other districts, because things are going smoother, in my opinion, in Franklin, doing the live instruction where they're in and whatever, and it's different, just so,
It would
we've
reduce
learned a
planning
few
demands,
things.
for sure. But we want to do it right. So we want to
Right.
test it out. We want to see how kids respond to it. Our teachers are experts at this. They'll be able to say, you know, student engagement is good. This seems to lead to better learning. So we want to try it out and find out what's the best way to approach it and what works best, and then we will come back with some recommendations for changes to our model.
What's the time frame for that, or you think, or general, I won't.
In general, I think
Hold
that
you.
we are looking at that transition of more students coming back to full in-person over the next 2 weeks.
Yep.
We'll be meeting with teachers and talking about the survey results and gathering their feedback and suggestions over the next 2 weeks. And I would say in December, we'll start piloting some
Okay.
changes. I don't think we'll make formal modifications or
Right.
changes to the plan until January, until we have a really good feedback on how kids are responding to
And that's a
those.
natural break anyway, coming back from the holidays,
And
if
it's the
things
end
go
of the
as well.
term,
Yep.
right? I mean, like, you'll be,
Yeah.
have one model for one term and then move into something
And we'll be
else
able
if
to,
that-
we don't want to modify a plan and then find out, oh, this actually doesn't work well.
Yeah, right,
You know,
right,
So we
right,
want to
right.
do it thoughtfully and gather
That'd be
more
better.
data. Okay. The last thing I have for you is a COVID update. So this is going to respond to your question that we're getting from parents about notice. So I won't go into the details of this because it's in the plan and we've reviewed it before. So all of our protocols are in place for responding to COVID, whether it's a student presenting with symptoms during the day or if we get notice from a parent after school hours that a child's potentially been exposed. There are significant restrictions on what we are allowed to share with the public per HIPAA laws. However, our plan and our protocols in place. If a child tests positive and has been in school during a period of time they were infectious, then the first thing we do is contact tracing, identify anybody who was a close contact of that child. Those people get a direct phone call from our school nurse who informs them they're a close contact and walks through the steps of what they need to do for testing and quarantine. They also get a follow-up confirmation letter that explains what it means to be a close contact and what you need to do. We would also send a letter out to the entire class that the child tested positive in, and it would say they're a member of our school community, because we cannot identify whether it's a student or a staff member, but a member of the community has tested positive for COVID-19 that has been involved with your child's class. We're letting you know your child is not a close contact, but we're making you aware of the situation. These are the symptoms to look for. A letter also goes to the whole school that's impacted.
Sorry, I didn't.
No,
just
go ahead.
lose my train of thought. When you said send a letter, is it an email or actually?
It's an email letter.
Okay, I was going to say, because otherwise you lose 2 days. I just want to make sure that's not.
Yeah, no,
okay. So
it's
a
an email
clarification.
letter.
Okay.
Yeah. And so then one letter would go to the whole school committee that just would say we have a positive case of COVID in our schools, just letting you know. It would go to the impacted school. So it's a need to know in terms of those HIPAA standards. If a child tests positive and has not been in school while infectious, if a child's exposed to COVID and tests positive, and they because of our hybrid model, some kids haven't been in school since Tuesday. If they're exposed on Wednesday or Thursday and test positive Saturday, there is no school transmission. There's no school exposure. In that case, we cannot send a letter out informing you of that. What we are doing that I think will help parents, we are going to be adding to our website a district COVID dashboard. On that dashboard, there will be a link to the mass.gov site that will give you community transmission rate and data for the state as well as Norfolk. And we will also have a dashboard for school-based cases by building. So it will say number of cases at the HL day over the last 14 days, number of cumulative cases, and that data will be updated weekly. So parents, if you want information about school-based transmission, you can look at the district-level dashboard by building. But we can't send a formal notice out if there's no school exposure.
Right, or if it's over the holiday break or something, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right, that's fair.
I like
So-
the dashboard. It's like what the colleges do.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so it'll be available. We'll update it weekly. Any parents that want that information, again, we're reporting by building. We're not identifying students or staff. It'll be the number of cases in the last 14 days, just like the state report. Our fabulous tech team worked on that. I vetted it with Mark Peasy, who's one of our tech staff today, so it's ready to go. I think it'll be up by Monday, and you'll be able to log in at any point and see where we are in the district, where we are in the state. And he put a picture of Norfolk, and it'll be colored based on the state code. So it's red today, but hopefully it'll be green soon.
So for those of us that just like to take a
If you just want a quick look, you can see the color of the town, and you'll know. The other thing is the state is going to change the way they're reporting state data.
Again?
And they are going to be, well, in a positive way. They're going to be pulling out of the community data cases that are in major organizations like prisons or nursing homes.
good.
So that you can see what the
it's highly
community
misleading.
data looks like versus the prison data.
Because it
Or-
used to be they would give us an asterisk, right?
Yeah.
But now they've stopped doing that, but then they're going to.
They're going to break it down
separate it.
further, is my
Okay.
understanding from the governor, because otherwise people see 84 known cases and they're panicked. I got a lot of calls and emails over the weekend, and that is primarily isolated at the prisons. So they are going to be pulling out that data from prisons, nursing homes, hospitals that are in towns.
Do you know, do any of the, I guess, schools that do this with a similar dashboard, are they all doing a weekly type scenario?
For the most part, people are. A lot of times when we have a student that is potentially positive, it takes 3 to 4 days before we even get a result.
Okay.
So I think weekly is probably the best way to
Okay,
update
that was my
it.
question. That's the best
Yeah.
approach, then? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there going to be something that says like updated on the state or something, or
That's a good
this
point.
information?
Yes, and what we're going to do, I think I'm going to follow the state. The state is updating the dashboard for the town every Thursday, so we will update ours on Thursday. So people won't have to look back at 2 different dates. The current data will be every Thursday. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's a good idea.
So that's our plan. I attached, just in case you were interested, copies of the letters that we send for all 3 scenarios. We have not had to send any letters out. We have not had any cases of students that have, or staff members that were positive or infectious while in school.
Was there any discussion about maybe doing a text alert to be like, hey, check your email, because I don't check my email
a good
every
point.
day. But
If
my phone
you-
is always
I
like,
don't,
I think we would run into HIPAA issues
Okay.
with that.
or just make sure that the email has a big, in capital letters, this is not about your special
Yeah.
schedule. This
Oh,
is something you need to
when
pay
we're
attention
notifying
to."
close contacts,
Buster goes off.
when we notify close contacts, there's a call that goes first.
okay.
So they get the call
No,
and the letter is a
the
follow-up.
technology fatigue is real.
Yeah,
I don't want
I-
to miss
I-
something.
I get that for sure.
Closing your email is like the virtual equivalent of just like pulling a blanket over your head. Like I open it up and then
Nope.
I
don't think so.
can't do it anymore.
That's all I have for tonight.
All right. Moving on to King Philip. Sorry, I know you're still part of it, so sorry.
All right, so we won't go over that. Survey did go out to parents asking about their Thanksgiving holiday plans. We are considering what to do the Monday and Tuesday after the break, whether to be remote for that time, to give people time to, figure out if they have symptoms or not, do testing, stuff like that. The other side of the argument from some people was that that might make people extend their holiday break, and they'd still just be coming back. So they're on the fence about that. We're going to talk about that the next meeting. FY22 budget planning has begun. We got our schedule of budget meetings, and that's all scary and not my problem.
It is going to be scary this year.
Yeah. Some great news. KP was ranked in the U.S. News for high schools 75th in the state, which was awesome.
That's great.
And they are in the U.S. They came up, I think, Mr. Zini said, at least 50 spots higher they ranked. So that was great news.
Oh, very good.
One big thing for our next meeting coming up, we had a first reading of the policy review for personnel. So we're going to be reviewing that again and voting on it next meeting, I believe. Rentham talked about their survey that they sent out to parents and teachers, and there were two things that really struck me. They did a Teachers Pay Teachers subscription. I don't know if you've heard of Teachers Pay Teachers. Yeah. They did that just so that there was another resource for teachers instead of reinventing the wheel, that they could just go there and get some resources. Another thing they're doing is they're having technology office hours for parents, which was awesome. I know.
Nice.
So if a parent's really struggling,
Yep.
there was a time where they could meet with the IT people and have a
Nice idea.
one-on-one.
This is Rentham that's doing this?
Yes.
That's very nice.
So I thought that was a really great idea. But,
Great.
yeah.
Okay. We looked over the harassment policy, and we were recommending that we split it into two separate policies, a general harassment policy and a sexual harassment policy. Council had recommended that to us because the sexual harassment is so broad, it's just so,
There's a lot of
there's a
additional
lot of
protections.
information. I was blanking on what to call it, and they're anticipating possibly it could potentially be changed over the next few months. There could be some changes, so we're recommending as a subcommittee to hold off on the sexual harassment policy right now, but we did review the general policy, which was given to us by council, and it includes all protected classes, and we are bringing it forth for a first reading tonight, or in December, sorry. December will be brought forth in December for a first reading. So it's not part of it tonight, it will be brought forth. We just decided to break it up into two. I could see Thomas. Wheels are turning.
You don't have to do anything.
No, I was reading it.
He's on to the next.
He's on to the next
We have
one.
three policies for vote too.
Yeah, no, I just-
consideration
that's just-
tonight.
Okay. And that's it.
So we had three policies for tonight. One is just a vote on the immunization of students, and it just updates and includes the required flu vaccine per the COVID pandemic update. So that's an incidental change, so we're bringing that forward. Policy hasn't changed other than to include the immunization requirements for the pandemic.
Okay. So do we have a motion to accept policy JLCB, immunization of students?
I move to accept policy JLCB, immunization of students.
A second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I have a question.
This is the time.
It's discussion time. It's just a logistical question for parents who already did the initial round of send all your stuff to the schools to get your child enrolled in the schools, who now have a piece of paper saying we have this extra immunization. Who do we send that to?
The nurse, school
nurse.
nurse.
I just
And if she
scanned
doesn't have it, they will call you.
Oh,
They're tracking them, but yeah, you
I
do need
believe
to
it,
send it to the
okay.
school
Ingrid's home
nurse.
address. She's taking them.
I'm going to give it to you, and
Yes.
I will be out of my
There you
hands.
go.
at the end of
Here,
this
you
meeting.
take it. Give them the gun.
Then we had second readings on a remote learning plan that just,
Oh, did we vote on this, though?
We didn't, that
We
was
didn't
my
vote on it
discussion.
yet.
Sorry.
That's, I just got
Ahead.
confused too. I was like, wait, we didn't vote, did we? Okay, any other further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And now we know.
we had second readings on the remote learning policy and addendum, and this again, just, the pandemic is the first time schools have ever had to consider transitioning to remote. So based on what we learned from that, this just talks about when a remote learning plan might need to be put in place. We didn't have any changes from the first reading. I don't know if anybody has any additional modifications or changes they wanted to make tonight. If not, it'll come for a third reading and a vote next meeting. That's all we have for that.
All right. So moving on, sorry, I've got to pull the mask down or else my glasses steam up and then I can't read and it gets awkward, so bear with me here. All right, so we have a number of school partner renewals too.
Yep.
One is NCL. So easy to put the little thing on here. So I think everybody's fairly familiar with what they do. But in short, do a lot of things bring the community together through various fundraisers, fostering of town spirit. Primary initiative is to fundraising in order to raise vital funds to disperse back to the community. Through our annual community assistant grant process in 2015, NCL dispersed $31,000, for example, back to local organizations, programs, and educational needs. So they do a number of very, very good things and have done so for a number of years here. So, do we have a motion to renew NCL as a school partner?
I'll make a motion to renew NCL as a school partner.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, NCL.
And then our friends at CPAC, who did a presentation for us just, I think, a couple meetings ago. They also would be renewing, or looking to renew their partnership. And as we have noted, they have, in particular, the last few years have really done an outstanding job as far as how active they've become and how helpful they've become. Excellent organization, one I think, so all these are no-brainers, but this definitely is a no-brainer. So do we have a motion to accept or renew the partnership of CPAC?
I move to renew the partnership of CPAC.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Nope.
Thank you, CPAC.
All those.
Wait, not yet. All those in favor?
Aye.
And now Jen Wynn.
Loved trunk or treat. Had a
Okay.
great time.
All right, so then we need a motion to accept the meeting minutes from our October, it says 10th on here, and it says 13th on the exhibit. I don't know the date, so you have to,
I
someone...
think it was the 13th.
I think it was the 13th as well.
Okay, so we're going to go with the 13th. So do we have a motion to accept the minutes from our October 13th meeting?
I move to accept the notes from our school committee meeting on Tuesday, October 13th.
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. And then we're looking at December 8th. How does that look for everybody?
One of 2020.
That's not conferences, is it? It's not the week
I'm
of
just looking at
conferences.
that. Do you, Tom, off the top of your head, know if that's conference week?
That's a
I don't
Tuesday,
think
right?
It is.
That's a conference day.
Could we move that meeting back to the 15th? I think that would be better because we'd have
You mean
more
up to the
information to update the committee
Yes.
on any changes to the plan. So, and that would, be easier for parents with conferences.
Sure would.
But okay.
Okay, so 15th, does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Okay. So
In
that is on.
person here.
Pardon me?
In person here.
Yes. Barring they change, but as of right now, that's the plan.
Barring full widespread vaccination, and then we'll just meet at FA.
We'll just say that we'll just.
We'll just be back at FA.
Seems a little unlikely, but okay.
Positive person, Tom.
Okay, that's good for you. Finally, before Medora keeps going, do we have a motion to adjourn this evening's festivities?
I move to adjourn.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I've got great material.
All in favor? Aye. All right, we are adjourned.